Today I'm going to pull the paneling off of this wall, fix some electrical stuff we got going on down here, and we're going to have to take care of this dryer vent, either replace it or figure out exactly what they've got going on and see how we can make it better or make it right. Let's take a closer look. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's take a closer look at this. Alright, so we just finished up this wall. Well, we still have to finish the taping and get everything squared away. But before we get into that, I want to get into this wall. And the whole reason we're even doing this is because there used to be a electric baseboard heater right down here on the floor. And those are the wires. So those wires continue on. If I unhook them, my lights don't work, my switches, my outlets, nothing works. So I can't have them connected together like that. They were connected together inside of that electric baseboard heater. So what I'm going to do is put an outlet, I don't know, about right there on the wall wherever the stud is, and I can get the wires to reach. The next problem I have here is this dryer vent. Somebody globbed it all up with foam insulation. I don't know why exactly, and I'm not sure what's back here. I was thinking about just kind of like cutting around it until I could figure out what's going on, and the same thing with the washer drain pipe. But for now I think I want to just cut it. There's a stud right here, so I drew a line on it. I'm going to cut it with my oscillating multi-tool right up that line and across, and then I'll deal with that after I see what's back there and I know I'm not going to cut a wire or something like that. So that'll allow me to get this piece of paneling off. Need to pull the trim off this window, and then we'll be downtown. So I'm going to cut that first. We started on that right now. Now, using my flat bar, I'm going to go ahead and knock this trim off of this window. I may reuse this trim, but I don't think so. This was all, it's all a wood trim. It's not a horrible trim, but it was never really intended to be painted. So I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll see how it comes off. It's not a horrible pine trim. It's eventually I'm going to do this wall too, just so that everything's drywall. I hate paneling. Now there's one piece of trim under here. I'm going to knock that off, and then I also need to take this piece off right here. And these may be nailed together. I believe they are. Well, I wanted to reuse it. it, but it's trying to split out on me, so we're not so far gone yet, we can't. But okay. So here's kind of the problem. There's a vinyl frame on this window, and this kind of comes up under it, so I can't just knock it up out of its nails. I kind of have no choice but to pry it out without breaking any of that stuff, and I don't want to break the window. I'd rather sacrifice this piece than break the window. So, not too horrible. I guess I could glue those pieces back on if I wanted, but it definitely broke it up a little bit. Alright, I'm going to go through and pull some of these nails, and we'll be ready to start getting some of this paneling off. Got all the nails out, and there's a seam in the paneling right here. In fact, it's kind of open. It wasn't really ever put together right. So I want to get right here and start pulling that off. And the nice thing is about this stuff is it does break fairly easy, so I can take it out of here in pieces. This is a little bit tight because I still have the washer and the dryer in here, but now we can get back here and just start popping this stuff off. There's some crown, well, it is a crown molding, but not really what you would think crown molding would be. It's not going back on because this is a drywall ceiling, so it'll be getting taped and finished. But it is holding me up from getting that paneling off. I've got my multi-tool here, my painter's tool. I can't quite get the pry bar in right here, so I'll just knock this in with the hammer. These are pretty tough tools. I really like it. I've got one everywhere I go because of the fact that they are tough. pretty tight against the ceiling. I don't want to try and just rip it out of there, so I'm gonna just work on the bottom down here. Very hard for me to record, and pry the rest of this off. With this piece of paneling off, I pulled the insulation out, and yes, I have plenty of wires here to put an outlet right here and get them tied together. What I didn't realize is that they're just both feeding back into that wall. Had I known that over there, I could have just taken care of this over there and not bothered to put an outlet here. But outlets aren't a bad thing, no matter how you slice it. You can never have too many. So now we just need to get this off and start working on putting it back together. This won't be a bad project at all. It shouldn't consume a ton of time to get this tightened up and get it looking good again. Alright, there we go. Just that easy. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this piece off over here where this dryer vent is, and then we'll start working on some wiring. Alright guys, it's the next day. I've got light because I have to turn breakers off to wire this in. I'm going to be using this box right here to tidy these wires up down here. I have also discovered, when I took all that spray foam insulation out around the dryer tube, that the dryer tube itself was loose in the wall. I found a bunch of dryer lint inside the wall. Just not a good scenario to have that pipe loose from the fitting. So I went and I bought a new dryer vent. Unfortunately, it's 2 degrees outside, so I'm going to head out there shortly, take that one out and install this one. But what I am going to do different before I install this one is this aluminum tube, let me show you here, is just very simply pushed into plastic. Unfortunately, this is kind of sort of what dryer vents have turned into. They're not screaming high quality here. So there is not a whole lot other than some little plastic tabs holding this in, and it's not super sealed. So I am going to take some foil tape, or it's not a duct tape, it is foil tape. If you've never seen it or used it, it's a metal tape, and this is for hot and cold ducting. And I'm going to go ahead and tape this up real good right here and just get a nice seal on it so that I know none of the dryer exhaust fumes are being vented into the wall, thus back into the house. So I'm going to go ahead and get that taped on there, get this outlet installed. We'll come back and take a look here shortly. Alright, I've got a fair amount of light going on here, even though power's not back on yet, and I just kind of wanted to show you what we got going on here. This box is a very deep box, and I selected it for that reason, and it just nails on with a nail here and a nail at the bottom, and then it has these tabs on it right here, and you set those against the stud. Now that's a 1/2 inch, so when I put my 1/2 inch drywall on, it should be right here to the outside edge of this box. Both white wires on one side, the switches or the outlets are marked on the back where what goes where, black's on the other side, and that ties those two wires together. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pushed in there, get it tightened up, and then we'll be moving on to the next. I got the new dryer vent installed, 4 screws outside, slid it out, put that one in, 4 screws in, a little bit of caulk. Hopefully it doesn't freeze before it dries. It's definitely not ideal. You can kind of see what's going on out there, about 4 feet of snow in areas. So what I've got here is the outlet is done, and we also I've discovered some areas with no insulation, and especially around the windows. There is absolutely no insulation up top there, nothing. So I'm going to go through and stuff all that with insulation, and then we will be ready to start getting some drywall on. I think what I'm going to do here is put a small piece just to aid in getting it around these 2 pipes and trying to get it as clean as possible, and then I'll just cut a piece out of the piece I cut here to fit over that little piece. It's no big deal. So I think that's how I want to do that. I've got all my nails pulled that got left behind from the paneling, pretty much everything cleaned up. I put a little bit of caulk down there on the floor. There does not seem to be any sill seal down there. There's nothing they put underneath that base plate. A little bummed out. They just used regular lumber for the base plate and not a pressure treated piece of lumber. But sometimes that's what they do. It's not showing any signs of rot, so I got to be okay with it. Not a lot I can do about it without doing a lot of work. So at any rate, I'm going to get some insulation stuffed around through here, and then we'll be ready to get some drywall on. I've got the drywall cut for over here by the next to the dryer, for the dryer vent to come through and the dryer drain pipe. The drain pipe is 2 inches. The bottom of this container is 2 1/8, and with everything marked out on here where I want it, I'm just going to set it on here. Oops. I'm going to hold it still, wiggling around a little bit on me, and mark that out. It's going to be a little bit bigger than what I want, but I'm okay with that because that'll give me a little leeway for a mistake. So alright, I am going to do basically the same thing for this. I'm going to go find something that's 4 inches around and draw that circle. I have both of these marked out, but the dryer vent, obviously I can just slip the drywall over because the dryer hose isn't hooked up to the vent. This one I cannot, because it's a solid piece of pipe that's running all the way to the washer drain. I could if I cut it, but I don't need to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this piece right here off, and then I'll go ahead and cut out each half of the circle, and this will give me plenty to screw this piece back on, and then I will have to do a little patchwork right here. That's why I've come up so high, so that the pipe's not really interfering with me patching this up. And once I put the corner on, it'll pretty much be there anyway. So I'm going to cut this with the saw, then cut this with the razor blade, and just break it. Let's do it. And yes, this is a drywall saw. Alright, now we'll just score this with the razor blade. And give it a break. There we go. Flip it over. Cut the back paper, and it's off. Now I'm going to cut the circle out here doing the same thing. I'm just going to score it with the razor knife. I might have to cut into it a little bit deeper and give it a break. I've got this piece all cut out and ready to go into place. I'm going to kind of get it in here, maybe get a screw in it, and then I'll show you what we got going on. Won't fit, it's bumping just a little bit right here, so I'm going to trim that off and then we'll get it in there. Alright, a little bit of trimming and I've got it right in here. Now I want it to go up a little bit, so I've got my flat bar underneath of it so that I can just kind of step on it a little bit and push it up. I want to go ahead and get me a screw started right here. I'm going to put my knee against the bottom a little bit, lean against this dryer, push this thing up just a tick, like that, and get this screw in. Alright, it needs a little more, but it's there. It's where I want it. Everything looks good. Get another screw down here. Alright, now it just needs a bunch more screws. I have this piece of drywall all screwed on, and before I start on the next piece, I did wind up with a gap right here, and I want to go ahead and pre-fill it. It's down the sides too. I've got some 20-minute mud mixed up, and I've mixed it up a little bit on the thicker side for good reason, because I want it to be able to hang in this groove this very nicely. So you cannot tape over a gap that big. And the hot mud, 20-minute mud, 15, 5-minute, whatever you want to use, is excellent for filling these gaps because it won't crack. So when it cures like concrete, rather than water evaporating out of it, so it works very nicely for things like this. going to just scrape this down nice and flush all the way across. I want to make sure the entire gap is filled, and what that's going to do is just make sure that I've got mud on both sides of the gypsum so that I know that it'll lock in there. If it locks in there, then there won't be any chances of it coming out. Once it's taped and it's all attached together, it's not going to come out anyway. Alright, I'm going to go down the side here because this is a little bit too wide also for mud, and then I'm going to get going on the other sheet of drywall. There we have it. We have our window cut out. What I want to point out real quick is that when I do my measuring for my drywall, I measure from the ceiling down, not from the floor up. So that means when I put the drywall in, yes, I have to lift it up a little bit to get that tight joint. And I would rather make sure I have the tight joint at the top where it's going to get mudded and seamed than a tight joint at the bottom. That's why I do it that way. I've got this over here kind of sort of in place, and what I want to do is I want to mark out my studs on my drywall. It just makes life easier for me, and then I don't have to worry about missing the stud. Some people put a little mark at the top, maybe a little mark at the bottom, or a piece of tape or whatever, and then they just kind of run it down and hope they don't miss. I don't like to do that. It only takes a few minutes to put some lines on here and figure out exactly where your stud is. So we're at 12 1/4. I'm just gonna, it's 12 1/2 down here. It must have a little itty bitty kick to it. 12 1/2 is good. So we're just gonna come up here and we're going to put a little line at 12 1/2. I know about anywhere where I want to put a screw, I'll mark it. No big deal. I can always add more screws if I feel like I need to. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that for everywhere where I'm going to have a stud other than the outside edge or around the window, because I know they're there. So I'm going to mark out my studs, then we'll be getting this in. I've got this piece of drywall set in place, but there's a problem. Let me show you what we got going on. Alright, I've brought you up kind of close. So there's a stud right here, and it is apparently protruding out much further than the other two studs, because when I push this in, there's a big enough gap by this stud to fit my finger in. And you see what's going on here. I cannot put screws in here because it'll just break through the paper. It just won't bend the drywall like that. So I need to pull this back out, have a look at this stud, and see how far up it goes. It doesn't seem to be as bad up here, but I'll just take my level across it. A good enough straight edge to see what's going on, and then if need be I'm going to have to trim a little bit of that stud off to get my drywall to sit on there right. So let's get this out of the way and see what we got going on. With the drywall out of the way, and I got my level here as my straight edge. If I just set this tight here and here, this is close to an inch. This is really bad. So, and it goes pretty much all the way up. At the very top it's good, and probably at the very bottom it's good. But this 2x4 is bowed in really bad. I don't know if that's apparent on the outside of the wall or not. I'll have to go out and have a look. But right now I need to figure out how much I need to remove off of this and where I need to remove it from. So I'm pretty sure that we were pretty good up here, but there's a little bit, so it's starting way up near the top and obviously goes way down past the bottom, because that's significant. So I'm gonna get my tape measure, kind of sort of space this evenly between these two boards, get a measurement, and then start marking this out. Then I have no choice but to use my multi-tool to cut this off. So let's get it cut off. Okay, here's what I decided to do. I put me a screw in the bottom plate, and I put a screw in the top plate, and ran this string down through here. So you can see in the worst area right here that we are significant, close to 1/4 of an inch. The other problem is this 2x4 is twisted this way, so this side actually sticks out further than this side. At this point in time, I really wish I had a electric hand planer. That would make my life really easy right here, but I don't. So multi-tool it's going to be. I will get some little pieces cut out just kind of as a guide, and once I get like just a little 1-inch section or 2-inch section cut out as a guide, then I will be able to cut the rest of it out a lot easier. But I am going to move the string over to the other side because it's worse than this side. So I've got some little dotted lines on here just so I can get my straight edge on there and mark out exactly the line that I want to cut. Then I'll do the same thing on the other side and we'll cut it. Here's what happened. I broke down, I jumped in my truck, I drove to Menards, and I bought a $54 electric planer. It was going to take me forever with the multi-tool, the oscillating multi-tool, and it was just going to be very, very time consuming. I probably maybe would have been done by the time I got back with this, but the amount of dust that was creating versus the chips that this creates, get a little bag with it, it fills up pretty quick, depends on how aggressive you get with it. But I've got it all planed down and it's good to go. It is time to get this stuff taped so that we can start getting it finished. I've already taped kind of over here where I cut that separate piece to go around the dryer vent. We're going to tape this one now, and I did mix a little bit of water with the top part of my compound just to get it creamier. This is about how I like it for taping, not as firm as I like it for finishing. I don't mix up the whole tub that way, because if I just mix up 2 or 3 inches on the top, and then that'll get me through the taping, and if I start to run low, then, or I start to get into thicker stuff, I'll go mix a little more. Now when I do these, I do want to fill this gap up, and it's not wide enough that it needs to be filled with hot mud. I don't want a ton of mud here, so I take a little bit of it away. Just want enough to glue that tape down. If you get too much mud in there, it just turns it into a nightmare for you. Your paper will buckle up on you. You just want enough to get it stuck down. Alright, I have got a piece of tape pre-cut here, and we're just going to stick it right down there and pull it right up here just like that, and stick it in with our fingers. Any of this excess mud I want off of the knife now. Oops, that sucks. And now we're just going to blade it up. Now the thing is the center of this tape, because this drywall is, you know, it's on an angle in to allow for this gap right here. So I kind of want to go halfway and just pull. There's not very much mud under there, so I want to pull whatever is out from under the tape. And like I say, the whole idea is I just want to glue the tape down. There's no reason to put big globs under it. And even what little bit is under it, I want to pull it out. That's all there is to it. I'm going to keep going, and we'll come back and take a look once I get everything taped. I've got one coat of mud over the top of my tape. I did have one little tape screw up down there. I got a little bubble in it, and I had to cut that tape out and put a new piece. Other than that, all the taping was fine. I do have one coat of mud going on over here. We're waiting for it to dry, and of course up the wall and over. Once that dries, I'll be able to get a second coat on it, and third coat, a very thin third coat, will wrap it up. So it's looking really good. I did glue this piece back together, and it just needs a little bit of trimming on that end to fit back in there very nicely. And the reason I glued it was, you can see there's a dado down here. It'd just be a lot of work for me to make a new one, and for me to glue those 4 little pieces back on was fairly easy. So, and no one will ever know once it's reinstalled. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. That's all we got for this time. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos going to pop up next to me. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.